Welcome to the Ideal Investor Show. This is the podcast where we help you challenge your mindset and discover where you are. Tired of stories about other people's success? We can help you change your life, determine your time freedom point, and join us on the journey to financial success. Let's go. Hey, hello everybody to another episode of the Ideal Investor Show, where we bring you interesting guests to talk about what we can do with our money, what are new things that are coming up. And today we have a wonderful new guest. Will Basta is with us. Will, welcome to the show.
Axel, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm really excited because I think you have a number of really unique things, what you have already done and what you're working on and so forth. Before we get into that, can you tell the audience a little bit, like, how did Will end up doing what he's doing now?
My background, primarily, I started in the corporate system it's crazy to say, but almost 15 years ago. And I was in healthcare technology. And so I did corporate about 4 years. And during that period of time, I was also being involved in sort of side businesses. People like to do when they're in businesses that are your simple 9 to 5. I have always worked remote, so I always had the freedom to have that extra time in between and not feel sort of locked down into an office in particular. And that period of time, I was also working for different startups and doing consulting work on the side, sort of innovative startups where you can sort of work closely with the CEO, which I think draws a lot of lines and parallels to being an entrepreneur, because you get to see how an entrepreneur actually runs a business and those kind of things, but primarily in the tech and healthcare system in the US. Obviously, we have a lot of problems with our healthcare system in the US. My companies that I worked for were doing innovative things to make it more efficient, I should say. I got involved in e-commerce, it was a failure initially. If I say failure, maybe on the revenue side. Took your original kind of Amazon course of how to build out a product, find manufacturers, those kind of things. But what that started is me really learning the back end of Amazon and really understanding the ecosystem of e-commerce as a whole, both with international importing from products and manufacturers, all the way to sort of running a product from the ground up on the marketing side, right? If we fast forward a couple of years from then, there was a few other different ventures in e-commerce. My business partner, who is from Australia, him and I sort of joined forces on a couple of different projects that had some success in different niches, health and wellness niche in e-commerce, like sort of supplement site type of stuff, as well as other different unique kind of products. And what we noticed around 2018, 2019 was there were some companies out there that were sort of doing it as a service, where if you don't have time, you're a busy professional, you can hire a service to sort of build you out a business in e-commerce 100% for you. And on the surface, it looked great because there's a profit sharing model. They're incentivized to grow it with you, et cetera. But what we really knew is that, given our experience at that point, is that these companies that were out there, which there was only a couple, really didn't have, I would say, true infrastructure or a really vertically aligned system within their business, meaning investors and people would come on, but they really didn't have they sort of had a hollow business model. It was very surface level, where they didn't have their own warehousing. They really just did a lot of third-party piecing together for the client. And so we saw an opportunity to take that model, refine it, legitimize it, and do it ourselves. And we started the first sense of this was around 2019, but really our first clients were in 2020. And we flipped the script on how you approach the done for you model, or it's in our industry, it's sort of called the automation model, or I don't like to use the word investment management, but it sort of is in e-commerce, and essentially building out our own warehouse system, leveraging our own contacts, not outsourcing any of the employees we have. And for about a year, we had a little bit of, and what this was building essentially e-commerce businesses on major platforms, your Amazons, your Walmarts, et cetera, online. And what we did differently, again, was really taking that infrastructure piece and sort of running with that with a low client volume for about a year until we realized we really had something. And in 2021, we went full force on marketing. And if we fast forward to where we are right now, our company's got hundreds of clients. We built over 1,000 stores online for investors. And we run multiple platforms. We're a corporate partner of TikTok for TikTok Shop. We do Amazon globally in Germany, in the United Kingdom, in Dubai, as well as the US. And it's a similar model still, where investors come to us and they essentially the commonality between all of them, they all have different backgrounds, but is that they don't really have time, but they want to have supplemental income in a digital space, and they want an expert to do it for them. So they pay us a premium, and we're operating and running businesses from brand building, from products from scratch, to a wholesale model where you source in bulk and sell at a margin, all the way to digital products, products of which you can have sort of a patent on a design, or essentially you can get royalties off a design. And that can be a print on demand type model where consumer purchases it and that actual print goes on the clothing and then gets sold from there. And so where we are today is that it's fast forward for 4.5 years at this point, running this model, but that's essentially how it happened. And when I give that story, there's more details to it, but it happened so quickly that I fast forwarded a lot right there. There's a lot of different stages in between of how the company has evolved and how I've seen just the consumer market evolve in terms of e-commerce, and what's the best approach these days as opposed to even as recent as a year ago.
Right. Yeah, understood. Now, I mean, one other thing that I find often with our clients, they have well-paying job. Typically, say what we're looking for, anybody listening, by the way, is what we call Henrys, high earning, not yet rich, or not rich yet. And we want to help them.
Yeah.
But in that community, I also find that quite a bit of my mentoring work is spent on helping them adjust and develop a mindset of an entrepreneur approach. You have property managers and insurance companies and lenders, real estate agents and inspectors and appraisers and so forth. And we pay them just like any company pays an employee. It's just more a fee-based payment. How much, or let me put it a little bit provocative, does somebody have to have a whole bunch of money already to start working with you?
Yeah, so we have different tiers of things, right? And so essentially, if it's going to be a done for you, like a fully automated kind of, I would say, a asset on autopilot that we're building from scratch and managing the whole thing, there is a decent amount. Obviously, it's all perspective on what's a lot of money, but we started around 35,000 to actually start and do it fully done for you. And we go all the way up to 200,000, right? But we do have tiers where we do done with you, where we actually work with the client too, which that costs are under 15,000. We have courses and stuff like that can be sort of a mid-level version of it, because obviously there's interest across the board. And some people have more liquidity to put into something like this, and some people have more time and less liquidity, right? So there is a middle ground in between, and it really just depends. We do sort of have an offering for anyone who would be interested in this kind of thing. I would say the interest level depends also on the kind of model when it comes down to products, right? Because if most clients will not come with an interested product or anything, we just do everything from scratch. We leverage data, and we know what will make them money because it's more of a money-driven thing, right? But we do have, over the last year, we've taken on bespoke projects where clients run our regular model, but then also want to have a little bit of a hands-on involvement of, let's say they want to go into the health and wellness industry, right? So they'd love to start some kind of probiotic supplement or something like that. We can do that, and we do those on a unique basis, on a sort of it's a case-by-case basis, I should say. But yeah, in terms of getting involved, but if you look at that comparatively to buying a franchise or something like that, it's much cheaper. And it is an asset that they do own, and they own it full time, right? And so I'm going to use the term regardless. That cost is essentially a franchising fee. It's franchising essentially the infrastructure that we've built, the team that we have, all working on behalf of the actual client, right? But generally, that's where it starts.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think anybody who's listening to us or has ever really started looking into having their own business knows that if you start a business, there needs to be some sort of investment. I find these ideas that you can really get to scale, like you mentioned earlier, with just this bootstrap kind of thing. You basically have no money and you kind of work your way. I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but it is obviously probably the hardest way to go about it. And even just a little bit of an investment bringing to the table will already make a huge difference. Now, one thing while you were describing what you do and some of the pricing, do you also include, because I think that might be interesting for some of our audience members, if somebody has already started a business, has been operating it, but maybe not in an e-commerce sense, or is maybe looking to say, okay, well, I've tried it myself to the extent that I've gotten now, but I would like some help to be able to scale.
Yeah, that's a good question. We get a lot of interest on that side where people will come and they have a brand or something that they may have started where they did blood, sweat, and tears to start something and it got to a certain degree and they realized they don't have time to take it to the next level. And we have brought brands from to this, and people who aren't watching this, from really minimal revenue to a crazy year, right? But those are ones where you have to do an analysis on it. And we only take them if we actually know that we can do it, right? It's not like someone can come with any brand and we say, hey, to scale a brand, obviously there has to be, sometimes you have to reduce the passion piece out of it because people want to do a certain product, but it's saturated, or getting the manufacturing, or it's a trending thing that's not going to last. And that will mean a lot of ad spend and a lot of marketing spend. And the way that we sort of do it is we like to reduce that as much as possible, reduce any kind of marketing spend, leverage AI animation and all of that, and just algorithms and things that are going in the right direction of what the product is. And so, yes, we do, but it comes down to an analysis of what's been built and will it be mutually beneficial or not. And we'll be honest with clients on that too. I mean, we turn down offers all the time for that, just because why would we bring this on if we know it's just going to be draining your pockets on marketing spend, and you're really only going to plateau?
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, with that being said, that kind of implies, and tell me if I'm wrong about that, but it implies to me at least that you have a pretty good idea. I'm guessing probably having something like a little bit of a market analysis part of the suite that you have to say, okay, what is something that people really want, or what is, I guess, would be the other option is to say, hey, this is something really innovative where we know there would be demand if somebody just were to actually come with that innovation or with that idea or new twist and something. Can you describe a few things just so the audience gets a little bit of an idea?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's all data driven. If I look at everything we've done in the past, the kind of products are literally all over the place. But there's a few focuses that we do have. And on the surface, they could look at saturated markets, but a market is only saturated if you're doing the same thing everyone else is doing within that market. And so, because we've been in this industry for so long, we have direct manufacturer context. We can source things at cheaper prices. We have unique ways of leveraging the marketplace and marketplaces in general in terms of multi-channel and making sure we're casting the widest net in the consumer market. So, for example, certain toys is huge. We've got a lot of contacts in the toy industry, the health and wellness industry I've mentioned before. Depending on how you're approaching it, skincare, supplement industry, that's a multi-billion trillion dollar industry going to be. And it's ultimately, yeah, it looks like it's very saturated, but there's always new things that are coming out, and there's always quality and how you approach the product that we can really grow things to a certain degree. Depending on the time of the year, like right now we're going into the summer in the Northern Hemisphere, and patio type stuff, homeware, kitchenware, also very, very big. Things that are, if we're not doing wholesale, which is selling other brands, if we're developing a brand, a lot of the stuff that we do too is also what do people do every single day and need every single day, but this could be another gadget or a thing that's unique that can attach to their everyday activity, right? For example, I'm just thinking of something right now. So people use laundry detergent to do laundry frequently, right? Maybe something that can make doing laundry a little bit easier, like some kind of tool or gadget or specific. We have one client that does really well, believe it or not, on pillowcases. It's a unique type of pillowcase that keeps it's actually temperature gauged. So stuff like that can be very, very unique. The data obviously changes, and we have an aggregate data from all of the years we've been in e-commerce, but also what is trending. But also, we don't want to build a product that trends and hits well for a little bit, then falls off. So it has to have sustainability built into mind. But those categories are really, really big. Toys, health and wellness, homeware, kitchenware, patio, lawn and garden. Categories within those categories, essentially. We see do the best. Home improvement, very, very big, growing immensely. People like to do a lot more stuff in the home improvement thing as opposed to hiring. They like to take on their own projects. Those unique things they can do and they can purchase that could help them with something that may break or they want to fix in their house, right? All of it has to do with how is it getting brought to market. We like to leverage, again, like I mentioned before, we leverage AI a lot when it comes down to generated content that's animated that we know catches, but also it's very, very big leveraging micro influencing because that reduces costs from traditional ad spend to, hey, you can partner with a collaborator that can get 100,000 views on a product and they're only taking a little bit if actually something sells. So it's a win-win again. So there's also a technique behind it on what will collaborators want to collaborate with. They're really, really big on the health and wellness side. I keep touching on that because that is something that as people become more educated in the world, they understand what health is and they want to be more involved in. They understand you can't put a price tag on health. And so having good products in that arena, I think is extremely impactful. And we've built out a large amount of different supplement brands and different things in that space that have been truly, really successful.
Yeah, absolutely. I've always been a big fan of Shark Tank, and the most for me, and everybody obviously has a different viewpoint, but for me, the most interesting episodes were always the ones where somebody introduced a product where, like you said, we've probably been doing laundry for the last 10,000 years, but they came up with something
Yeah.
that either, like you said, makes it easier. Like one thing and maybe you and I should have a talk about that. I just kind of like interesting little thing occurred. My wife and I, we are kind of into healthy living and nutrition and those kind of things, and in some areas also supplementation. My mom was looking and she went to the pharmacy and said, "Hey, I bought this or I got this in the pharmacy." And I said, "This is the equivalent to you getting a cup of tea and you literally take two tiny little corns of sugar and expect the tea to be sweet." They want this stuff, but when they buy it, it gets really expensive if the
Yeah.
dosage is super, super tiny,
Yeah, I can go on forever about this piece because also toxicity is in the dosage too.
Right.
So
Yeah.
anecdotal evidence is it's insane how it gets skewed. And there's always money stuff behind it, right? But the dosage and the quality of what it is that you're talking about is the most important thing. You can buy fish oil anywhere these days, right? Is the quality of the actual fish oil and the omegas in it good? Is it clean? Most of the time, it's actually not, right? And so people surface level will just buy any one of these and they don't realize what dosage they actually need because everybody's a little bit different too. But a lot of these things they're filled with fillers. They can label it as fish oil, but it's loaded with all this other shit
Yeah,
that's inside of
exactly.
it.
Yeah. I'm just pointing it out because I thought it
Yeah.
was insane that I think on iHerb or one of those, and bought the stuff for my wife, put it in a package and sent it to Germany, where you would say, "Well, so what? We're sending it from one first world country to another first world country."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's not that they don't have it at all, but she would have to take like 20 pills of the same thing in the dosage available in Germany. So
Totally.
wow, somebody should actually find a way to make this proper dosage available in Germany.
See, and it's taking something, right, that is already out there, but it's
Yeah.
doing it better.
Yeah.
So, and that's when I mentioned before about like markets that could be looked at as like they're saturated. But hey, you could take something that's everyone's selling this supplement, but no one's selling it with the right dosage. And then that's where that one twist and that one change in formulation, included with the right marketing and approach and education around that, could make a product, even if you're late to selling it and you're the 1,000th seller that's selling it, actually surpass the rest, right? But there's a lot of different nuances within that. It's a very good point you just brought up. Absolutely.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so now since we use the term investor, obviously investors are always interested in basically return on investment. And in my case,
Yeah.
when people come to me, they're looking for passive income. And I saw in the reading up on your background that you also have what you call like passive income opportunities. Can you describe a little bit how that works
Yeah,
or how that would?
totally. So essentially all the done with you opportunities I would consider as passive as they can be, meaning you own the asset. Once we build it out for you, we're operating the entire thing. As a client, you're essentially just a financial driver. So that upfront fee and you fund the products. You get paid out. We just charge a little bit of the profit that we're actually making for the client. In terms of margins you can make on products, that will depend on the actual marketplace that we're selling on and where we're selling it. For example, if we're doing wholesale, regular Amazon in the US, those margins are thinning, right? But that exact same model in Germany or Dubai are much higher. We're talking 20, 25% on products sold of actual ROI, right? Which is close to 8 to 9% on average in the US. That's a huge difference right there based on that type of model specifically on Amazon. Private label brand development on Amazon, margins in the 30, 40%, right? There is also a little bit inclusive of actual spending a little bit on marketing. There's a period of time where the margins will be much less, but once it hits its stride, those margins go up and they also have appreciation value. So an investor can actually exit and sell their store 3 years later, et cetera, for a 3, 4, 5, maybe 6x exit, right? Which is awesome. If we look at platforms that are a little bit less, Amazon's the biggest in the world, but you have all these emerging platforms. TikTok is a social media platform, but TikTok Shop itself is a shop piece within it. And that's been in the UK for a long time. It's now in the US and it will be expanding to Europe. That, what we see with our clients is around a 29% average on terms of products sold in terms of the actual ROI. So those margins are much higher. the amount of money you're putting into product, what's turning over month, you could take that and look at the average margin on products, and that's what you could be making per month once the store is actually scaled to a degree, right? I would say post 6 months, sales start pretty early, but fluidity in the business might take a few months. And then it's based on how many times the product's turning through and the actual margin you get off that. And then obviously our piece of that profit split comes out of the top line net that you're earning as a client, but it's as passive as can be. Again, I like the term passive income. I try to veer away of that. It is that, right? But nothing in this world is fully passive. We all know that, right? So there's just a little bit of work that needs to be done in the beginning, but it's as passive as you can be. You're just checking in 5 minutes a week on the business itself, and you're funding the products. We're doing literally all the legwork. And so as an investor, if you're looking at passive income opportunities and you want to look into the e-commerce space, which is a massively emerging space to look into and has so much opportunity and growth ahead, both globally and still in the US as well. It's a great opportunity that actually has a sustainable future to it. And if we want to be conservative and need to just say across the board, 15% or more on returns, if we want to at the lowest point, once a business is stable, right? And that's looking at the lowest side of it. We've seen, some products and some things we've developed for clients on platforms, which is high as 45% on a product, right? So it does vary. There's a lot of this, right? So it's an up and down kind of thing, but it does even out once a business gets its maturity level, which begins at 6 months and goes into a year and thereafter. But the big thing here is we look at it as digital real estate, right? You have a business online that's cash flowing in a passive manner for you. That's great. We all love that, right? Month over month returns getting paid out bi-weekly by these e-commerce platforms. But the long-term piece of it is, hey, you could have that for 1, 2, 3 years and maybe have multiple different stores, which we also offer the multi-channel kind of approach where you're selling in multiple different consumer markets. You then can exit one of those businesses and sell it. There's marketplaces all over where people are acquiring these businesses, right? And that's what we assist our clients in as well. So
yeah, that totally makes sense. And I would assume that the funding of the product is probably kind of like based on the turnover, right? Like you start in a month and you have revenue plus profit and you reinvest it for the next and the next, assuming growth is happening until you get to a point where you can say, okay, now we also can take some profit and still fund basically the growth in a way.
Exactly. And that's a decision, obviously, for the investor. Are you going to reinvest your profits or do you want to start taking a little bit of it out? Most of our investors are already financially comfortable. And so where they sort of get to that point is, hey, maybe at about a year, I'm comfortable taking a little bit of the profits out. But if you're compounding your profits and putting it in, means you have more working capital for the actual deployment into actual products, which means you're selling more products, which means you're making more money. And so we always recommend, hey, it's your business. You own it. Take out profits if you want, as early as you want. But to accelerate a business at a faster degree, it's always better to reinvest your profits into the products or maybe expand in and get another business with it, right? And do a multi-channel approach where you're on 2 separate platforms, maybe a Walmart and a TikTok or an Amazon and a
TikTok. Absolutely. And see, this is well aligned in a way with what I'm basically preaching, because when people come to us and say, okay, can you help me build a portfolio of passive income real estate? It would make no sense to say, yeah, I can show you a well-curated property that is well-performing, but then in a year you sell it. I mean, exactly. Like obviously we're striving for more like generational wealth or at least a long-term investment. And I think the important aspect, if I understand what you described correctly, is basically that you make an initial investment, then you're basically rotating the revenue over and over to grow basically the amount of product that you're selling. And when you say you exit, this 3, 4, 5, 6x is, and correct me if I'm seeing this wrong, on revenue, not on the initial investment, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And it's a big thing here is there's the revenue. It's also what is the brand value, right? Because if you build out a brand and you start it on Amazon and then you expand it and it's on TikTok Shop as well, and it's doing well on multiple platforms, also not just in the US. That's a big thing we like to do for clients that have when they see this vision, it's great. And they're great partners to have, because whether you're located in Germany or located in the UK or Dubai or the US, whatever it may be, we can start in one market, say Amazon US, and then we can expand in the Dubai and the German market and the UK market as well. And then if you look at that and you're someone who's looking to acquire a business, and this is 3 years down the line, and this business has a product that has a strong brand, but that brand is not just strong in the US, it's strong in Germany and the EU, it's strong in UK, and it's also doing well in Dubai. So you're hitting multiple different markets across the world, which adds even more value to the actual brand itself if you were to want to exit and want to sell it, because it's doing a multi-channel and multinational approach when it comes down to the markets that it's selling in.
You're buying basically future potential, right?
Exactly. And it's also, you can look at, okay, what happened to this actual product and this actual business is after 6 months, they went into the European market. So what worked in the US market worked in the EU market, and then it worked in the Middle East in Dubai, right? And so it shows that it works in multiple markets, and it's not just a product that would do only well in the US. That, again, just alludes to what you just mentioned. That's a huge thing because it shows where is it going to go next and what is the potential for growth next. And also what other products can be developed in its category too. And you can rinse and repeat that, right? So that obviously has value to it, which again, it's what it could be, right? But you can prove that it's done it once by expanding into other markets. And there's more potential to do that again with similar products under that name, that brand name specifically.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think your analogy to franchise makes total sense, because I can vividly remember, I mean, it's many, many, many years ago, and shows you a little bit how old I am. But when these practical examples illustrated for our audience, if you say, okay, I have maybe my real estate as an anchor, as something like this inflation protected, long-term, generational. But then if you have some ideas and you want to say, well, I have never built a business that has a product, but I have this idea, then I think it would be great to work with somebody like you, Will, because then you know how to do the business building and people have the idea of what they want to.
Just even if they don't have an idea, right? If you just want to get in the digital space, we come with the idea too. That's most of the time.
Oh, cool.
Most of the time, people just want to have an e-commerce business, and we'll essentially build the idea out because we know it's going to make money, and we do it for them, right? It's people come with ideas, but sometimes we're like, hey, we have to shoot that idea down because we don't think it has long-term potential, right? But if you want to come to us and you literally don't want to do anything, you're going to come with an idea, you're just coming in as a capital partner, and you want to own an asset that's digital and has global potential and is sustainable. It is in its own way. It truly is, because we build products that we know will do well even with the recession, right? And so, but anyway, to get to your point, yes, 100%. It's if someone wants to go down that's in the space of the digital world and be part of that in diversifying. We get a lot of real estate investors that come to us because they like the model, and they're like, all right, let me just try something a little bit different. But again, I'm going to pay that premium to this partner, but I'll still own that asset. It's going to appreciate like real estate would appreciate. Not the same. They're two different things, obviously, right?
Right.
But that's why I call it digital real estate, right? Because it does have a place in the digital world, and you have that asset that is growing value, and it's also cash flowing a little bit sooner than a real estate investment cash flows. I mean, I'm involved in real estate myself throughout the US and Dubai, but obviously I look at this, I don't even compare them anymore because it's apples and oranges, but I love the idea of making sure that you have a digital footprint, because obviously everything is going. If we just one fact I'll throw out there, it's pretty interesting. The numbers give or take a few percentages here, but of all retail sales, e-commerce is still only about 20 to 25% of retail sales. And that predicts it's going to be about 90% by 2040. So purchases made are going to almost be all online exclusively in the next 15 years. And so that just shows that there's a lot of growth ahead, and it's still a good time to take a piece of that and own that asset online and have that asset online, right?
I'm absolutely with you. I guess I'm a little bit too old-fashioned to think that if I own a business, I also need to own the passion a little bit. But I guess you guys
and I understand that, right? It's and we have plenty of clients who have that passion, and they can do that on the side with what we build for them. But our goal is to make you money, right?
Yeah,
so it's like, come to us, we follow the data. And so it's for us, it's like, hey, this is going, you might not like it. John Doe and Jane Doe start a business at the same time. John could be selling, kids' toys, and Jane could be selling garden hoses, right? Or something, right at the end of the 6 months. It's so random, but it's what's going to generate money and what's going to make them a long-term sustainable business, of which could be valued a decent amount down the line, right? And can cash flow pretty early.
Yeah, well, if I were to work with you, which I might, I would probably still want to have something that I can say at the end of the day.
And that's totally fine. Absolutely. And that's totally something that we do. But we do have those people who come in, they're like, hey, I have X amount of money. I want to get into e-commerce. Just do it for me. Boom. And that's it.
Yeah,
and we just do it from the ground up, Yeah,
and I'm very grateful that I have you here today on the show, because we never had anybody who is basically offering a business opportunity with all the perks, let's call it, that a successful business brings, without first having to go through this typically relatively long period. I can sing a song about it, about how long it takes until you really have developed the mindset, have understood some of the mechanics and stuff like that. So I think you guys doing a super valuable service, besides the fact that it is a great opportunity. We're going through this transition. I think everybody can feel, even if we can't put our finger on it, but I say this almost several times a week now. It feels like there's really big changes going on in technology, in business, in the economy, in politics, in all kinds of things. Everything seems to be churning in a way. And to be in an area where the future is going anyway, it just makes sense. And I wonder for the audience to kind of ask yourself, take a moment and think back. How often have you said, oh, I wish I could have invested in Microsoft or in Amazon or in Apple, or now in NVIDIA would be the latest one.
Right.
This sounds to me like on a maybe smaller scale, not because we can't imagine $1 trillion company, but from a principle perspective to say, okay, this transition to e-commerce is happening. And we can either later say, well, I wish I would have jumped on the train, or you can do it now that we know where to go with you, Will.
Exactly. And it has enough years behind it where now we know that there is a piece that's Wild West, but we have enough data in e-commerce in general where we can actually predict trends a little bit better than we used to, right? And we know what platforms are selling, we know which ones are emerging, we know what markets are going to be doing better, et cetera. And so as early as it is, there's enough of an established piece of it that does make it more of a sustainable type of investment than, let's say, 6-7 years ago. You just don't know. A little more of an unknown situation.
Yeah. So it's not going to go the path of the NFT, right?
No.
I had to do that one.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I brought up the last fact, and it's like, I don't know who the other 75% of the people are that are buying in store, but I think 90% of my transactions are done online. So
if we intrigue people enough, which I hope we did, how can they get in touch with you, Will?
So we have our major social media channel is eComm with ACV. So eComm with ACV. That's also our website, www.ecommwithacv.io. So you can book a call there with someone from our team just to learn about educational if you'd like. Obviously, go follow us on Instagram if you want to learn more about what we post. We post a lot of educational content in the AI and the e-commerce space in general. And again, that same handle is on our YouTube as well. We're all over. And also, obviously, my name, Will Basta. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm obviously one of the founders. There's two of us and a pretty large exec team, but you can find us on one of those channels. And yeah, we'd be happy to have a conversation about it.
Awesome. Yeah, and we're going to put all the things that you just mentioned in the show notes so people can find it easily. So with that being said, at the end of the show, I always ask 2 questions if we have the time. So the first one would be, if you could meet anybody, who would it be and why?
It's a good one. I'm going to say Gandhi, because just the history behind it. And I'm a big history buff. And just his approach to things and that culture in general is really intriguing to me. So I would love to sit down and have a tea with Gandhi and pick his brain on what he thinks the world is these days and how his perception of where the state of the world these days.
I was just about to ask you. So when you said Gandhi, my first question that popped into my mind, and my brain is weird that way, it was, are you going to tell him what became of India or no?
Gandhi and I have the same birthday. So that's another why.
Yeah, exactly. To say, hey, how are we celebrating this year?
Yeah, exactly. What do you want to do for your birthday this year?
All right. The second and last question is, if you had a time machine, where would you go and why?
I would say probably in the 1500s in America. To me, it's very interesting to sort of see how things sort of developed here outside of initially touching on this soil from the EU, and sort of, it would be a crazy time and sort of scary. But again, big history buff on those kind of things. And to me, it's sort of an interesting era. Also, the Europe in that era too is very, very interesting to me too. So I think before there was any kind of guns or any of that kind of stuff, right? Before anything ever got established anywhere, it would be such an interesting time. I just love the tropical islands, and just like there'd be pirates and
yeah, I was just about to say that it's like Pirates of the Caribbean. You could live that in real life.
But I was going to tell you, I'd like to be in my 30s in the early 80s, the 80s in general, in Miami.
Yeah, right. And knowing what you know now, that's the important little thing. You know.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, those are all wonderful choices. And thanks for stretching a little bit to answer those two questions. And thank you for making time to be on the show. And I hope we can do it again.
Likewise. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.